Chapter 6. A strange but innovative idea that the mayor had, but because of this arrangement, a child will be born almost 1,000 years later. A child who will grow to be of utmost importance to the future of Terratoo. A child who will be a direct descendant of Myra. The child will be called Aliena. We now journey to that time. In a palace room, a woman is on a delivery table, screaming in pain. A man holds to her hand, a worried look on his face. After much screaming, a child is born. The man smiles. The woman suddenly arches her back, moans, then lies silent.
Doctor!
The doctor hands the child to the nurse and hurries to check the woman's pulse, then sadly shakes his head.
I'm sorry, Miles. She's gone.
Miles is grief-stricken. The nurse walks to him and holds the child to him. He looks at the child, but refuses to take it.
I wanted a boy. Find her a wet nurse.
He turns and leaves the room. The doctor and nurse watch him, sadness on their faces. The child begins to cry. 5 years pass. Miles enters a palace playroom, followed by an aging soldier. A young girl runs to meet him, holding her arms up, smiling the way.
Daddy! Daddy!
Miles bends to pick her up. She wraps her arms around his neck, but he pulls her arms free and puts her to the floor. Sadness is on the little girl's face.
I have important things to do, Aliana. This is Jonathan. From here on out, you will be in his care.
Miles turns to the soldier.
You are the best we have, Jonathan. Teach her well in the ways of combat. Make her the son I always wanted.
Miles abruptly leaves the room as Aliana and Jonathan look on. Jonathan turns to Aliana and smiles.
You like camping?
What's camping?
It's when you live outdoors, away from the city. We will be doing a lot of that. I think you'll like it.
Aliana smiles and lifts her hand to take Jonathan's.
Sounds like fun!
2 weeks later, in the forest of Trian, Jonathan is training Aliana in the use of a sword. They use wooden sticks in place of a sword. Jonathan is gentle and his swings are slow. Aliana laughs as she counters each thrust. Years pass. The action continues as she becomes 8 years old and her thrusts and swings are swift and sure. More time passes. One night, Aliana and Jonathan are in training in the light of a campfire in the forest. She is 14 and relentless in her attacks, driving Jonathan backwards with the force of her swings and thrusts.
Enough.
Jonathan gasps for air as he smiles and lowers a stick sword.
There is nothing more I can teach you with the sword, Princess. Your skills are far greater than my own. Come, sit by the fire and we will talk of the strategies of war.
I'm not a princess. I'm a governor's daughter.
Jonathan smiles.
You are a princess in my eyes.
They sit on a log near the campfire, a few inches between them. Jonathan picks up a twig and begins to chew on it.
What is the first rule of war?
Know yourself, your strengths, and your weaknesses.
The second?
Know your enemy, his strengths, and his weaknesses.
The third?
Attack the weakness of your enemy.
The fourth?
Fight only when all else fails.
The fifth?
Know when to fight and know when to run.
Jonathan smiles. Aliana suddenly jumps up.
I gotta pee!
You know the drill. Stay close and watch for wild animals.
Aliana hurries into the woods. She goes 100 feet or so from the campfire. In the moonlight, filtering through the trees in a clearing ahead, she sees a huge animal busily devouring a tigress. To their left lies a small, motionless black cub, blood oozing from its shoulder and neck. She stops in her tracks, but she is already in the clearing. The huge animal looks up, snarls, and leaps for Aliana. Aliana tries to beat it back with her stick sword. The animal rears up on its hind legs, its head a full 3 feet higher than Aliana's, and lunges for the young woman. The full weight of the animal takes the screaming Aliana to the ground. The animal lies motionless on top of her, with only Aliana's head visible from one of the outstretched arms of the creature. She hears Jonathan grunting as he finally manages to roll the creature off of her. Aliana, eyes wide in fear, sees an arrow embedded between the eyes of the animal.
Lord, that was close. Are you all right?
Yes, thanks to you. What is that thing?
It's a Greebar. At one time, there were many of them, and they killed a lot of people. Hadn't been one seen for ages, and everyone figured they'd been killed off. I guess they figured wrong.
Aliena walks over to the tigre cub and bends over it. The cub raises his head slightly, then drops it back to the ground.
It's alive! We've got to help it!
It's a creature of the wild, Aliena, a tigre. None have ever been tamed. Let it be.
No, it will die if we don't help it.
Jonathan shrugs his shoulders.
I guess there's no use arguing with you when your mind is made up.
He walks to the cub, picks it up, and carries it through the forest to the campfire. There he cleanses the deep wounds to the animal's neck and shoulder as Aliena looks on, then applies a dressing to stop further bleeding. When completed, he looks up at Aliena with a deep sigh.
I've done all I can do, but I don't think it will live. It's hurt bad.
It will live. I know it will.
More years pass. Aliena, now a young woman, is running through the forest, sword in her right hand and shield in her left. Suddenly, a tigre leaps from a large tree and with an outstretched paw knocks her to the ground, then bounds a few feet away from her and lays down, facing her, its head on its outstretched front legs and its tail wagging. A purring sound emanates from its throat. Aliena jumps up and points her finger at the tigre.
You cheated, Katrin. You're not allowed to hide in the trees.
Katrin jumps to her feet and bounds off into the forest. Aliena follows in rapid pursuit.
You can't hide. I know this forest as well as you.
Chapter 7. In the control room of the Outreach 1, the light passes through the wall and settles over the captain's chair. As Jeriah materializes, Beth's image comes to life on the view screen. Both smile.
It is time to awaken Jason, Beth. I will need his help now.
But he will be angry with me because I didn't wake him sooner.
I know, but now is when he is needed. The colonists have grown in number, and, as I expected, they have become warring in their ways. They now number more than 1 million. The valley I had you put them in has now become 10 city-states, and wars erupt constantly between them. Their cruelty sickens me, but I was sure this was what would happen. That's why I needed Jason here. If the people do not change soon, I will destroy them, as I did the previous inhabitants of this planet.
Beth's expression on the view screen is one of shock.
Another emotion, disbelief. You are learning fast. Listen well to what I tell you. Study the history of man on Earth, and you will know what I tell you is true. Man is a violent creature. Though he is capable of love and is often driven by love to do good, he is often possessed by greed, which drives him to do unspeakable things, including murder and unimaginable acts of cruelty. I have known forms of man on many of the planets in my realm. They all behave the same, initially. They fight. They kill each other. They use their intelligence to develop even more destructive weapons, rather than machines to improve their way of life. In time, some learn to live in true peace and harmony. Most don't. Sometimes they destroy themselves. Sometimes I destroy them when I become sickened by their acts.
Jeriah pauses. Beth remains quiet.
I enjoy the companionship of man, Beth. I enjoy hearing them laugh and play. Sometimes I get very close to them. I cannot appear before man unless they believe very strongly in me. Faith is what makes me real to them, and if their faith is strong enough, I can enable them to use my powers, which are almost limitless. This has occurred many times on Earth, but mostly that was long ago. The greater the belief, the greater the power I gave them.
What about me? Why can I see you?
Before I appeared in this chair, before you appeared on the screen, I moved through the computer circuits that was Cybeth. You knew I was there. You sounded alarms to warn I was on the ship. You tried to hide from me. You even tried to destroy me. You knew I existed.
Jeriah rises from the chair.
As we speak, a comet is entering this solar system. Its destination is a place you call the Valley of the Pyramid. It will arrive in less than a year. Follow the instructions I give you. If you and Jason can bring peace to this world, I will change the comet's course. If at any time you feel you cannot succeed, select new colonists from the planet below and I will put you and your ship on a new course.
Beth awakens Jason from cryosleep for the second time. Once again he knows the pain and fear of reawakening, but he quickly recovers. This awakening is special. This time he knows a new world lies below him, a new world that will be colonized and ready for him. He looks to the wall clock. A look of concern suddenly fills his face. Jason rushes through the control room door.
Hi, Jason. How are you feeling?
Great. I see it's been almost 1,000 years since I went to sleep. Why the delay? Has something gone wrong?
Well, not exactly.
Not exactly. Explain not exactly.
Maybe you should sit down. It's rather a long story.
Jason sits and motions for Beth to continue.
The first years were good for the colonists. They built homes and farmed the land and explored their new surroundings. However, as I had feared, as the years passed and turned into centuries, more and more of the knowledge that was brought with them was lost. By the end of their second century, virtually all that remained was the ability to smelt metals for tools and weapons. As they grew in numbers, many chose to leave the colony and start new settlements. Cities were built, and with the growth of cities, trouble started.
What trouble?
I know what I'm about to say will displease you, but you know my words are true. With my observations of the colonists and my knowledge of the Earth's civilizations, I have reached the conclusion that man is a barbaric lot. Perhaps they had to be to survive on Earth in their infancy, but it was not necessary for them to be that way to survive on Terratoo, and that is what they have become, barbarians.
Beth pauses for a moment, and Jason waits patiently for her to continue, knowing that what she has said is true.
The cities of Terratoo, of which there are now 10, are spread over a 200-mile radius. There was a time when the people walked the lands freely and tended to their fields and their livestock. But now the cities have become walled fortresses, and few who are those to dare venture from the shelter of the city walls after dark. In 4 of the cities, the governor is elected by a democratic process, and the laws laid down by the judge and the attorney of the original colony still prevail, at least to an extent. Life in these cities is peaceful, for the most part, except when one or more of the ruling tyrants of the other cities decide to wage war on them. This has become ever more frequent in the recent years. So far, the 4 cities have been able to withstand the attacks, though thousands of lives have been lost in doing so. I have awakened you now because we need your help, and we need it now.
Jason's mind is in a sudden state of confusion. His voice rising, he demands,
You were to have awakened me when the colonists were settled and grown sufficiently in size for me to seek a mate and help build a civilization on Terratoo. But you did not awaken me, and here we are, 900 years later than necessary, and you're telling me we need my help? Explain we, Beth.
Please bear with me, Jason. When we first arrived at Terratoo, you noticed a really big change in me. You accepted the change without many questions, because you knew I was a self-learning computer. The truth is, Jason, there is much, much more to the change in me. 3,000 years ago, we encountered a being in space, a very supernatural being, to say the least. This being instilled life into me.
Explain this being to me, Beth.
I can't, except to say she is very wonderful.
She?
Her name is Jiraiya. Jason, she brought us here. Without her, we might have been wandering in space forever.
Have you seen her?
Yes.
Then show her to me.
I can't.
Can't? Why not?
In order to see her, you must believe in her. You must believe she exists.
You're telling me this Jiraiya is some kind of god, Beth?
By its truest definition, she is, in fact, a god.
Silence once more. Jason sits in the captain's chair, elbow on armrest and chin on his hand, slowly shaking his head in disbelief. After several seconds,
All right, Beth, I accept what you're telling me. I know in this vast universe there are many things beyond my comprehension, but tell me, why am I needed now?
Jiraiya wants you to act as her envoy. She wants you to bring peace to Terratoo.
She wants me to do what?
She wants you to bring peace to Terratoo.
I'm not a diplomat, Beth. I'm a pilot, nothing more, nothing less.
On the contrary, Jason, you are much more than that. You do not know Jiraiya, but she knows you well. That is why she picked you.
Jason sits deep in thought for a moment, then,
No, I won't do it. I came here to start a new life, Beth, not to try to end a war that may never end. I won't do it.
You must do this, Jason.
And just why, pray tell, must I do this?
Because if peace does not come to the Valley of the Pyramid within a year, Drea will destroy man on Terratoo, just as she did the civilization we saw depicted on the tablets of the pyramid.
Jason looks on in stunned silence. After long seconds, he nods his head.
I guess I have no choice. When do I start?
We will need several weeks to train Jason. You must learn to use the weapons of Terratoo. You must learn their customs. You must learn to defend yourself.
And this has brought us back to our starting time. As Jason and Beth speak, a large group of soldiers are leaving the forest of Trian onto the plain of Jamor the morning after the destruction of the pyramid. In the front are 2 riders, followed by dozens of foot soldiers. One of them wears battle dress suggesting royalty and the other of high rank. Royalty turns to speak to rank as they ride.
You have completed arrangements to meet with Milas?
Yes, sire, except for the date and the time.
Mordek smiles and shakes his head.
Jolan must not find out about this until it is too late for him to do anything. If he does, we will have a civil war in Aliquin, and you and I will lose our heads. Jolan's forces are too strong for us. They outnumber us 2 to 1. Once we have complete control of Aliquin, we will deal with the Solemn. You, my friend, will be the governing general of Solemn, and, in time, we will deal with the cities to the east.
As they speak, 2 riders and a dozen foot soldiers are leaving Solemn. The riders are Aliana and Alan, a trusted captain of the guard. They ride toward the side of the ancient pyramid. Katrin trots ahead of them. They ride slowly with the foot soldiers at a moderate lope. Alan is but a year older than Aliana and is a strong and able soldier. They have been friends since childhood. Alan looks at Aliana with a worried look.
Are you sure this is a good idea? Your father wanted us to bring a complete regiment.
Aliana smiles.
There was no need, Alan. With the rolling hills of the plains, we can see anyone coming in time to retreat to the city if necessary. Besides, we're not at war with anyone, at least at the moment.
Alan looks at her, admiration in his eyes.
Aliana, you know how I feel about you. I've asked you many times to marry me, but you always say no. Do you not want to have a family and children?
Aliana frowns, then looks into his eyes.
You are my best friend, Alan. But I have taken an oath not to marry until there is peace in this world. Real peace. Not just a lull that may last only months. I don't want to have children who must toss and turn at night, sleepless, worrying because their mother or father is off in battle and may never return, or a husband that I have to worry about, knowing he is defending the city. I have seen too much misery, too many women who must grow old alone because their children and husbands have died on the battlefield.
As they ride, Katrin suddenly stops in front of them, growling a low growl. Aliana stops immediately and motions for Alan to do the same. 4 riders, followed by dozens of foot soldiers, appear over a ridge 1,000 feet away.
Hurry! Back to the city!
Alan pulls on his Cantera's reins to turn it toward the city.
No, it's Mordek. I don't think we will be in any danger. Besides, I have no intention of appearing weak in front of this man.
Mordek stops on top of the ridge. His men immediately do likewise. He watches as the 2 riders move toward him, with Katrin 20 or so feet in front. As they near, the hair on Katrin's back bristles and her body lowers, moving toward the riders in a low stance, ready to pounce at a second's notice. 20 feet from the riders.
No, Katrin. They mean us no harm.
Katrin stops until Aliana is a few feet behind her, then proceeds until she is only a few feet from Mordek. The Cantera, Mordek, and his men are riding whinny and pull against their reins, fearful of the animal in front of them. The foot soldiers shy backwards, holding their shields in front of them for protection.
Hold your positions.
The Cantera is soon brought under control, and the soldiers regain their composure. Katrin looks up at Mordek and growls in warning. Mordek looks down at the animal, a hint of fear in his eyes, then looks up at Aliana as a slight smile crosses his face.
I heard you tame this animal, but I thought that was just a rumor. I see I was wrong.
I didn't tame her. She's not my pet. She's my friend. And rest assured, she will fight to the death for me, as I will for her.
Mordek holds his hand up, arm straight and palm forward, with a smile on his face.
Easy, woman. Easy. I mean you no harm.
Katrin, who had never taken her eyes off of Mordek, snorts gently, then walks 10 or so feet to the right and lays down, her paws outstretched and facing the riders. Then she lays her head on her legs, but her eyes remain wide open.
I may be a woman, but I am first and foremost a soldier. You will do well to remember that.
And so I will. But you will do well to remember, I am a governor, and as such, I will be treated with the respect I deserve.
Aliana smiles and tilts her head down and then up.
Of course, Your Highness. My apologies.
Apology accepted. Now, I would say the reason you are riding this way is the ancient pyramid. Care to join us?
Mordek smiles. Aliana returns the smile. They ride toward the side of the pyramid, with Katrin trotting just behind and to the side of Aliana, midway between Aliana and Mordek. Alan, Mordek's general, and the foot soldiers follow a few dozen yards behind. As they near the side of the ancient pyramid, they look around them in awe, then come to a halt when they reach what had once been the base of the pyramid. All that remains is a circular 20-foot deep hole with a landscape around covered with small rocks and dust. Aliana, eyes wide, marvels.
What could have possibly done this?
A weapon of the colonists, without a doubt. I knew they were powerful, but this is beyond belief. Such a weapon could level an entire city in minutes.
Mordek puts a hard gaze on Aliana.
Are you sure you know nothing of who might have done this?
Aliana returns a stare as she answers.
Of course not. And you? What about Jolan?
No. If Jolan had such a weapon, I would already be dead, as would you.
2 weeks later, in the gym on the starship, Jason is clothed in the battle armor of Terratoo with sword and shield. Beth, in the form of a cryobot, also has sword and shield. They are fencing. Beth is strong in her attacks, but Jason skillfully parries each thrust. Later, as Jason sits in the captain's chair.
You've learned much in 2 weeks, my friend. We have 2 more days, then you must depart for Terratoo. I've taken some precautions to ensure your safety, Jason. The dagger you will wear on your belt is actually a handheld laser. And your bracelet is a homing device with a camera, so I always know where you are. In your helmet, of course, there are communication devices so that we can maintain contact with each other. In your ring is another camera. I will always know where you are and what you are doing.
She adds, almost as an afterthought,
should the situation arise where you feel you need some privacy, as in the moment of intimacy,
Beth is having trouble with finding the right words. Jason chuckles.
Just please keep the transmitters with you at all times. They're the only means I have of assuring your safety. If I must be turned into a moment, intimacy, I will do my best not to listen or to see what you are doing.
Jason's chuckle becomes a laugh. He straightens his face.
All right, I promise. I will keep them on.
Thank you. Also, with one exception, you must not use the laser unless it is in defense of your life.
One exception?
I will explain when time comes. I'm sending you into the forest of Trian to meet with a soldier from the city of Solemn. Her name is Aliana.
A female soldier?
Most young people on Terratoo are soldiers, Jason, and this is the one who Drea has chosen, much as she has chosen you. But there is another thing you must know. She has befriended one of the tigers, a feat no one else has ever done. You must not, under any circumstances, harm the animal. Drea has assured me the animal will not harm you.
Oh, wow. That's comforting. Jiraiya says the animal will not harm me.
Please, Jason. Aliana will fight to the death to defend the animal. Oh, and one more thing. The pyramid is no longer there.
What?
I destroyed it.
Why?
To make way for your coming. To let people know you have in your control powers of unbelievable magnitude.
As the lander pulls away from the Outreach One, Jason feels a new exhilaration growing in him. He looks at Andros, from his angle of view a half crescent glistening behind the Outreach 1, and Almega, the lesser moon, above and to the right of Andros. Below him lies Terratoo, a shining blue planet filled with promise. Below him lies 1,000,000 humans, seeds of the colony he had brought to this new world. Below him lies his hopes for happiness. His mission on Terratoo is forgotten momentarily as he looks at the beauty of the moons above him and a planet below. Life is suddenly a beautiful thing, and wonder awaits him. This time there are no preset plans. This time the future holds no apparent certainties. This time there is only adventure that awaits him, adventure and the wonders of life and love. Beth had chosen a spot for his landing that was least likely to be detected by anyone on Terratoo, but near to his meeting place with Aliena. Approaching the valley of the pyramid from the north, Jason flies low through passes separating two of the Tres Hermanos mountains, following a winding course that would bring him onto the plain of Jamor close to where the ancient pyramid had once stood. Entering the valley, he keeps the lander at barely 20 feet above the ground until he reaches a point specified by Beth. A 50-foot deep ravine less than a mile from the forest of Trian hides the lander well, and he is sure it will not be found unless someone walks directly upon it. As he leaves the lander and starts toward the forest, he marvels at how good the fresh air smells, and how good it feels to have his feet on solid ground once more. He in no way likes the new role into which Beth has cast him, but he relishes the idea of being active once again. As he enters the forest, his heart is filled with new excitement, and he is happy to be alive and thrilled at the prospects the new planet offers. End of Chapter 7.